Russia just took a major beating. In a series of successful strategic strikes, Ukraine's armed forces smashed their enemies' radars and air defenses, effectively ripping out Russia's eyes and shattering its shields all at once. The incident occurred in Russia's Belgorod Oblast, which is situated just over the border beyond northeast Ukraine, not far from the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv, which Russia has tried and failed to take on several occasions. It's a key region in the conflict for both sides. Russians have used Belgorod as a base since the invasion began. Troops and supplies often gather or pass through there, and the area has served as a launch pad for Russia's incursions over the border and into the Kharkiv region. Ukraine, meanwhile, has repeatedly targeted Belgorod in an attempt to disrupt Russia's logistics and damage the flow of troops and munitions to other areas. It's launched artillery strikes and drone attacks into the area, which have increased in intensity over time. Because of this, Russia has steadily built up its defenses in Belgorod as the war has progressed. It set up numerous radar stations near the border and deeper into the region to scan the skies and spot any Ukrainian drones or missiles that might come into range. Russia has also deployed air defense systems like the Soviet-era S-300P. Developed back in the 1970s and part of the larger S-300 family or air defense missile systems, the S-300P is fully automated. It uses targeted radar technology to spot and track targets, combined with a central command post which helps to identify viable targets before firing missiles to intercept and destroy them. Despite its age, the S-300P is a relatively strong air defense system. It essentially forms a vast shield across Russian territory, scanning the skies to bring down any Ukrainian drones or aircraft that might enter the area. Some units are even capable of taking out ballistic missiles too. As such, the presence of S-300Ps or similar systems in any area makes it much harder for Ukraine to launch any successful aerial strikes in that region. What's more, despite being created for air defense purposes, many of Russia's S-300 systems now boast offensive capabilities too. The Russian army has repurposed some of these systems to carry out ground attack strikes on cities like Kharkiv. This involves reconfiguring the system's radars and software algorithms to be able to track ground-based targets as well as aerial ones. It also involves modifications to the S-300 missiles, equipping them with different types of warheads that are most effective for land strikes. In short, the S-300 is one of the strongest and most versatile pieces of military hardware Russia has left, and dealing with these systems can be a nightmare for Ukraine's armed forces. However, as seen so many times over the course of this conflict so far, Ukrainians are always up for a challenge and have consistently proven themselves capable of defying the odds. This was clear in the famous Operation Spiderweb attack of June 1st, and another example of Ukrainian resilience and strategic superiority just unfolded once again in Belgorod. On July 20, the armed forces of Ukraine launched a successful and devastating long-range precision strike on a Russian S-300P surface-to-air missile launcher. The news was shared on the official Telegram account for the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Successful hit. On July 20, the Ukrainian Defense Forces continued to degrade the Russian Federation's military capabilities with a series of successful strikes across multiple locations. Ukrainian strategic fires successfully impacted a Russian S-300P system in Belgorod Oblast, Russia, significantly reducing Russia's long-range air defense coverage in the region. Taking out an S-300 system is a massive win for Ukraine. It instantly weakens Russia's position, wiping out that all-important shield and opening entire areas up to Ukrainian drone or missile strikes. Numerous new viable targets emerge, and even if Russia is able to repair or replace the system, that will take time and resources, giving Ukraine the opportunity to follow up with further strikes. Also, it's worth noting that each S-300 is worth well over $100 million, making these systems some of the most expensive items in Russia's air defense arsenal. At a time when the Russian economy is struggling so badly and the country has lost so many important and pricey pieces of equipment, the Kremlin really can't afford further costly losses. But unfortunately for them, the S-300 wasn't the only target of Ukraine's strike. As the General Staff Telegram post explained, in the same Oblast, our forces also struck a Nebo-M radar system, critically impacting its functionality and simultaneously degraded the operational capacity of a nearby 5N66M Big Bird over-the-horizon radar station. The Nebo-M is a multifunctional radar system and a relatively new addition to the Russian military, since it was only rolled out for real-world military use in the 2010s. Complex and technologically advanced, it makes use of multiple programmable multi-band radars and a central data fusion unit to help it detect not just drones and large aircraft, but even long-range ballistic missiles and stealthy fighter jets. The Russians even claim that this radar can spot 5th-generation US fighters like the F-22 and F-35, which are famed for their stealth and anti-radar capabilities. The so-called Big Bird radar, meanwhile, is often paired with the S-300 systems and famed for its over-the-horizon capabilities, which give it the ability to detect targets at extremely long ranges. This in turn helps Russia spot Ukrainian drones, missiles and aircraft well before they strike their targets, giving the Russians time to intercept and bring them down. Together, the Big Bird and Nebo-M provide far-seeing eyes, gathering vital information about Ukrainian attacks and helping Russia defend itself. But even with its cutting-edge radars and mighty missile launchers, Russia wasn't able to stop this strike. Instead, it's left with more than $200 million worth of damaged equipment, given that the Nebo-M is also worth around $100 million alone. The General Staff's post went on to explain how important attacks like this are in terms of weakening Russia's defenses and empowering the Ukrainian armed forces. These coordinated strikes represent a substantial blow to the Russian Federation's air defense network, diminishing its ability to protect its forces and infrastructure and enabling continued Ukrainian operations. The degradation of these systems directly supports our efforts to reduce Russia's capacity to wage its war of aggression and its continued targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure inside of Ukraine. These strikes directly degrade Russia's ability to project power, defend its forces, and sustain its illegal occupation of Ukrainian territory. The defense forces will persist in conducting operations to undermine the critical systems and enablers supporting Russia's war machine. Ukraine will continue until occupiers abandon their invasion and Ukrainian territorial integrity is restored and a just, lasting peace is established. While the General Staff didn't go into any specifics about which weapons were used in the attack, it did release video footage of the strike. The clip shows 2 explosions, and analysts have suggested that guided multiple launch rocket systems, or GMLRS rockets, were used, possibly with the aid of HIMARS or M270 launchers supplied to Ukraine by Western allies. Regardless of the specific weapons involved, this was a vital victory for Ukraine and yet another example of the country's incredible ability to defy expectations and battle back in the face of overwhelming adversity. Taking out an S-300 and multiple radar units is no small feat, but Ukraine pulled it off, and all of a sudden, Russia finds itself drastically weaker in the Belgorod region. Because of that, and because of the imminent, ever-present threat of further Ukrainian strikes in the area, the Russians will have to adapt and adjust their strategy. If the systems are fixable, the Russian army will need to deploy repair crews to the area to get them back online. If they're beyond repair, the S-300 and radar units will need replacing, and in the meantime, any other key targets in the area, from ammunition storage facilities to command posts, will be under threat. That will send panic and fear through the Russian ranks, the same kind of fear and panic that Ukrainian civilians experience day in and day out because of Russian drones and missiles speeding towards their towns and cities. And this isn't a one-off success story, it's part of a concerted, calculated plan of action from the Ukrainian armed forces to wipe out Russian radars and damage their aerial defenses. The same sort of thing that's happened in numerous other regions in recent weeks and months. On July 2nd, for example, in the dead of night, Ukrainian forces launched a successful maritime drone strike on a Russian Nebo-M radar complex near the village of Mayak on the northwestern Tarkhan Cape of Crimea. The whole attack was captured on video and shared for all the world to see, and the Crimean Wind Telegram channel wrote a post detailing exactly what had happened. Yesterday, there was whining and howling in Z Publics that some military facilities were hit on Tarkhan. Today, it became known what it was. Near the village of Mayak on Cape Tarkhan, the Nebo-M radar, worth about $100 million, was hit. A fat target and a very important one. This is a mobile radar complex for detecting aerodynamic and ballistic objects at medium and high altitudes, part of the Nebo radar family. The Nebo-M complex includes a meter-range radar module, the Nebo SVU radar, as well as a decimeter range radar module, the Protivnik GE radar. The detection zone of the complex is 600 kilometers. The number of tracked targets is 200. Another Nebo-M taken down. More Russian eyes ripped away. The channel later confirmed that the entire complex was taken out, including the meter band radar module, the decimeter band radar module, and the central command and control cabin of the Nebo-M system. In total, that's approximately $100 million worth of damage, all done with a relatively cheap drone dropping bombs from above. This attack was also a first of its kind, as it was the first recorded instance of Ukraine's armed forces launching a drone quadcopter from a maritime platform to successfully drop munitions on land-based targets. Such a tactic had not been recorded before, and it opens up whole new possibilities for Ukraine to target and deal damage to targets in coastal locations. It also gives the Russians a whole new headache, since they now know that Ukraine's drones could attack from any direction, even across the seas. The strike is also said to have opened up a huge radar gap in Crimea, effectively creating a safe corridor that Ukrainian drones can now travel through in order to strike other targets on the peninsula. This was revealed by a military expert and reserve lieutenant colonel in the Ukrainian Armed Forces, who spoke about the strike with Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. The expert explained that the range of the Nebo-M radar is its biggest advantage. By placing these systems in key locations, Russia can essentially scan the skies for hundreds of miles in every direction, covering vast swathes of Ukrainian territory, contested border regions, and frontline areas. However, by taking out the Nebo-M in Crimea, combined with another successful strike on a Russian 96L6E air defense radar system near the city of Saki, Ukraine changed the game. As the lieutenant colonel states, "We can assume that for some time Crimea will not be covered from the western and northwestern directions, and this opens a window of opportunity for the Ukrainian defense forces." Again, just like Belgorod, this will inevitably make the Russians panic. Without eyes in the skies, they won't know if, when and how Ukraine might decide to strike next until it's too late. They'll need to frantically find new ways or deploy additional radars to the region to rebuild their defenses, but Ukraine could deal a whole lot of damage in the meantime. Also in Crimea, on June 26, Ukrainian military intelligence revealed that it's launched another big drone strike on a Russian S-400 Triumph air defense system. The attack was carried out by an elite ghost unit of the Main Directorate of Intelligence, or HUR, and also involved successful strikes on Russian radars, as revealed in the HUR's Telegram post. Drones of the Ghost Special Unit of the HUR, the Defense Ministry of Ukraine, consistently continue to weaken Russian air defense in the temporarily occupied Crimea. The video shows footage of combat work on critically important and expensive components of the S-400 Triumph air defense system. The following were hit by the reconnaissance aircraft: 2 multifunctional 92N2E control radars, 2 91N6E detection radars, the launcher of the S-400 complex. Radars are the eyes of the enemy air defense system. Without them, anti-aircraft systems become incapable of combat. The Ghosts also enjoyed similar success in the Donetsk region. On July 19, the HUR reported of yet another major Ukrainian drone strike on Russian air defences, leading to multiple radar systems and surface-to-air missile launchers being put out of action. More precisely, 2 S-300V launchers were targeted in this attack, along with 5 radar systems that support those launchers and other Russian air defense assets in the region. Also part of the S-300 family of missile systems, like the S-300P, the S-300V is known for its superior versatility, capable of engaging various kinds of aircraft and missiles, including both cruise and ballistic missiles. It uses long-range interceptors to take out its targets, and is another valuable piece of Russia's air defense machine. And just like the S-300P, Russian forces have repurposed many of their S-300V systems to enable them to strike on ground targets too. Thankfully for Ukraine, these S-300Vs are unlikely to be launching any missiles anytime soon, with both reportedly suffering serious damage in the attack. The HUR wrote a post on Telegram detailing exactly what had occurred. Ghost of the HUR in the sky over Donbas, the elimination of enemy air defense complexes continues. Soldiers of the HUR Special Unit of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine Primary continue to systematically weaken Russian air defense, now in the Donetsk direction. The video shows footage of the destruction of expensive equipment of the occupation forces. The following were hit by precision strikes by Special Forces drones. 3 Podlet 48Y A6K1 radar stations, 2 Nebo-M SV radar stations, 2 launchers of the S-300V complex, the P-18 radar station. The armed struggle continues. 5 radars, 2 launchers, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment, all successfully struck by Ukrainian drones. Official video footage of the attack was also shared, showing the strike from the drone's point of view as each one flies towards its target with expert precision, dealing blow after blow to Russia's defences. This series of strikes on radars and missile launchers is clearly part of a calculated plan of action from Ukraine. It's picking and choosing its targets with care, hitting Russia where it hurts the most, blinding its eyes and shattering its shields, forcing the enemy to adapt and weakening its position along the front lines and deep into occupied territories. And it's clearly working. Recent reports from online open source intelligence, OSINT researchers, have revealed that Russia is actively removing and repositioning significant numbers of radar systems. One researcher, who goes by the name of Athene Noctua on X, shared an update on July 21, posting satellite images that showed Russian low-altitude radar systems being taken away from their previous locations. These systems are typically most effective at spotting low-flying aerial threats, like drones and cruise missiles, and researchers found numerous instances of such radars being suddenly removed from Russia's eastern and central military districts. There are a couple of possible explanations for this, but several researchers have argued that Russia may be scrambling to reposition these smaller, weaker radar systems in areas where larger, more powerful systems like the Nebo-M have been damaged or destroyed by Ukraine. In other words, it appears that Russia is making a desperate attempt to restore radar capabilities in places like Crimea and Donetsk. But there are 2 big issues with this strategy. First, as stated, the radars being moved aren't anywhere near as advanced or efficient as the likes of the Nebo-M. They don't have the same huge range, meaning they aren't able to spot targets ahead of time, and that makes it much harder for the Russians to intercept and counteract incoming threats. Second, by moving radars out of certain districts or regions, Russia is weakening those areas. So even if it brings eyes back to places like Donetsk, new targets might emerge for Ukraine in places like the Central Military District. Targets like the Yellow-Buga drone production plant, which Russia relies on to churn out the hundreds and thousands of drones it uses to bombard Ukrainian cities like Kyiv on a daily basis. In short, this move is a lose-lose for Russia, and Ukraine wins either way. It has new targets to aim for, regardless of how the Russians respond, and there's no telling where and when Ukraine might strike next. It could use its proven maritime drone strike strategy to take out targets anywhere across the Crimean Peninsula, for example. or weaken Russia's positions further along the front lines. It could, alternatively, decide to take advantage of Russia's reduced radar capabilities to launch surprise strikes far beyond the borders, looking at targets like airfields, oil depots, or military factories. There may also be even more Ukrainian attacks on other radars and air defense systems in the weeks and months to come, as the country continues its push to turn Russia's huge summer offensive into yet another failure for President Putin. Now, learn more about how the summer offensive is already doomed to fail and could prove to be Putin's most fatal mistake in our recent video on the subject, or discover how Ukraine is enhancing its air defenses in an affordable and unexpected way. And be sure to subscribe to our trusted news channel too if you haven't already, to stay updated and in the know about all the latest important news and developments from the Russia-Ukraine war and other major conflicts across the globe.